Russian forces on Wednesday seized the first major Ukrainian city in their onslaught, the strategic southern port of Kherson, as they stepped up bombardment of civilian targets across the country, laid siege to other cities, including Kharkiv, the country's second-largest city, and pushed to encircle and cut off the capital, Kyiv. A huge convoy of Russian military vehicles continued to stand ominously to the capital's north. Russian artillery and rocket fire have cut off essentials like electricity, medicine, water, and heat to many Ukrainian communities and turned a growing number of offices, homes, businesses and vehicles to crumpled, burning hulks. Counts of civilian deaths are rising, and around the country, people are sheltering in basements and tunnels as explosions shake the ground above them. In Kyiv alone, some 15,000 people are sleeping in the subways. The United Nations said that 227 civilians in Ukraine died and 525 were injured between February 24, when the invasion began, and March 1, but has noted that its numbers are likely undercounts. Shelling from heavy artillery, multi-launch rocket systems and airstrikes were responsible for most of the casualties, according to the UN Human Rights Office, which is leading the UN's count. The week-old Russian invasion appeared to be making its biggest gains in the south, with the capture of Kherson potentially clearing the way for a bid to seize Ukraine's entire Black Sea coast, which would cut off the country from world shipping. Russian forces surrounded another key port city, Mariupol, whose fall would enable two flanks of Russian and Russian-backed fighters to trap Ukraine's forces in the southeast. More than 1 million people have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion began last week, Filippo Grandi, the head of the United Nations Refugee Agency, said on Thursday. For many millions more, inside Ukraine, it's time for guns to fall silent so that life-saving humanitarian assistance can be provided, he wrote on Twitter. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court opened an investigation on Wednesday into allegations of war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide committed in Ukraine since 2013 and during Russia's current invasion of the country. The prosecutor, Karim Khan, had previously said that he planned to seek approval from the court's presidency to launch the investigation, but he said 39 nations had referred allegations to the court, enabling his office to move forward immediately. For weeks, fear inside Ukraine had grown. But once Russia's invasion began on Thursday, hitting the country from the north, east and south, the war became unavoidably tangible for Ukraine's people. This is a full-scale military conflict, a development that once seemed unimaginable in Europe in the post-Cold War era. These images document a populace coping with the initial stages of an invasion and struggling with uncertainty and fear. A Western intelligence report said senior Chinese officials told senior Russian officials in early February not to invade Ukraine before the end of the Winter Olympics in Beijing, according to senior Biden administration officials and a European official. The report indicates that senior Chinese officials had some level of direct knowledge about Russia's war plans or intentions before the invasion started last week. President Vladimir Putin of Russia met with President Xi Jinping of China in Beijing on February 4 before the opening ceremony of the Olympics. Moscow and Beijing issued a 5,000-word statement at the time declaring that their partnership had no limits, denouncing NATO enlargement and asserting that they would establish a new global order with true democracy. The intelligence on the exchange between the Chinese and Russian officials was classified. It was collected by a Western intelligence service and considered credible by officials. Senior officials in the United States and allied governments passed it around as they discussed when Mr. Putin might attack Ukraine. However, different intelligence services had varying interpretations, and it is not clear how widely the information was shared. One official familiar with the intelligence said the material did not necessarily indicate the conversations about an invasion took place at the level of Mr. Xi and Mr. Putin. Other officials briefed on the intelligence declined to give further details.